Today, we're going to take a look at the generic congressional ballot for the month of March. This will theoretically show us who's in the lead to control the U.S. House and maybe even the Senate. I last did this in October. Now that we're only 8 months out, we're going to have to take a look at this a little bit more often. So we'll look at a few different sources, we'll compare it to some past elections, and we'll see where we're at. So first, here's RealClearPolitics. And right now with the RCP average, Democrats are ahead by 4.3. They're at 46.7. Republicans, 42.4. So clearly still a good chunk of undecideds. But Democrats have only improved where they were at over the past few months. In every one of these polls, it's either tied or the Democrats are ahead by as much as 9. That's the big data poll where Dems are hitting 50%. And you've got some pretty big sample sizes here. All of these are over 1,000. One of them uses adults in their sample. Some of them use registered voters and others use likely voters. Then we've got the sample dates over here, and some of these are starting to get a little bit outdated. But let's look at the timeline. If we go down here, you can see Dems have led the entire thing ever since last March. And when I did this video last time, in early October, Dems were up by about 2.8, so they've gone up more than 1%. And if the election were held right now, I think it's for sure the Dems would win the House. And for me, I tend to think that each percentage point here is about 5 seats or so. I know there's a lot of polarization, nothing is perfect, but if the Dems are ahead by 4 points, I wouldn't be too shocked if they flipped around 20 seats. But there's plenty of time to go. A lot of things could change between now and November. But for some other sources, here's VoteHub. This one is similar, and the timeline is pretty similar as well. And because it's always great to take a look at other sources, especially other aggregates. Here's Decision Desk. Here the Dems are up by 4.7. So you could average all these out. It's pretty clear that the Dems are in the lead here. The more Republican-aligned pollster, RMG Research, they do have the Democrats only up 1. So always try to factor in some of the biases of some of these pollsters. Sometimes it matters a lot, other times it doesn't really matter at all. Now for comparison, let's go back to the last election in 24. Now this was different, it was a presidential election. Turnout's going to be way higher. Here at the finish, it was pretty much dead even in the polling. Republicans were up just 0.3%, but they actually won it by 2.7. Some of that I would think is the Trump effect. There's a certain segment of voters that aren't being captured by pollsters. But half of these pollsters showed the Dems in the lead here. So it's only in retrospect we find out who the real winners and losers are in the polling. But if we go back about 8 months before that election, Republicans were ahead by about 2.5. There were several lead changes. In the end, Dems were the ones holding a lead going into the final week. Dems probably felt pretty good right about now, but I guess late breakers, they win for the GOP. So when it's close, sometimes even if it's not, it really doesn't matter what's happening 2 months out from an election, sometimes even 2 weeks. But there's other times where the polling results are pretty accurate. Here's 2022. Remember, Dems actually had more success in that, mostly because of that Supreme Court abortion ruling. But in the average here, Republicans were up 2.5, and they won it by 2.8. So not bad at all in the aggregate. But this morning console poll here was pretty terrible. They had the Dems up 5, but almost everybody else showed the GOP with a lead. And if we go down and take a look at that timeline, here's one where the Republicans were pretty much in control for a while. Then it got really narrow late summer. It was back and forth, but the GOP ended up breaking away in the final couple of weeks again. So this is what's going to happen leading up to an election. Whoever's leading in the polls, that side is going to be confident. The other side is going to dismiss them. Then if it ever changes, everybody's going to be a hypocrite and say the opposite. Now the best one-to-one comparison is the first midterm under Donald Trump. That's 2018. Now take a look at this. Dems were clearly way ahead here. 7.3% in the aggregate. And they did even better than that. They got it by 8.4. So a little bit of an underestimation there. And look at Rasmussen here. They had the Republicans up by 1. That is a complete wipeout. CNN even had the Dems up 13. So you're going to get these extremes on both sides. Here there's a lot less suspense. Dems were completely in control here the entire election season. It got a little bit narrow here in June of 18. But generally, Dems were ahead by 6, 7, 8 points, headed right into the election. Nothing changed at the end, and the polling pretty much panned out. Now, in that election, Dems did gain about 41 seats, so that kind of lines up with 1% equaling about 5 seats. So right now, it looks like Republicans are just trying to minimize damage. They could get it together a little bit by election day and minimize the losses, but it could also go in the other direction. Dems could be up 7, 8, 9% again. If that happens, it's going to be a massive blue wave, and even the Senate, I think, would flip. Now, that is the cycle in politics. The pendulum keeps swinging. Whenever one party wins, they say this is a mandate. Everybody rejects what the other side just did. Then they get in there, they do different things that voters don't like, and it swings back and forth. But let's take a look at the markets. Here's Polymarket. Right now, Dems are at 85% chance to win the House. For me, that does seem close to accurate. But again, we're 8 months out. It's very likely, but not a complete sure thing. But that percent is probably going to widen 1 or 2 points every 1 or 2 months. For comparison, here's predicted. Here the Dems are at 81, Republicans at 19. Slightly better there for the GOP. But as I said, if this gets bad enough for the Republicans, we could be talking about the Senate flipping. And here's predicted for control of the Senate. It's actually almost even now. Republicans still in control at 58, Dems at 44. But look at this 90-day timeline. Republicans were at 70 just in December. So it's really been dwindling here, and it could keep going, it could level off, or it could go in the other direction. So as far as the generic congressional ballot goes, the two biggest question marks are how many seats are the Dems going to win, and could they put the Senate actually in play? Republicans don't want to sit there on the Titanic and watch everything sink, but there is a lot of unpopularity in Washington right now. Republicans are there right now. Dems likely to be back there soon enough, blowing it in a totally different direction. So that's where we're at in the generic congressional ballot for March 26th. So let me know in the comments. What do you think about this polling? What are the final results going to be? Could the Dems get it up to 8%? Can the Republicans come back and minimize losses? Is control of the Senate seriously up for grabs? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.